Everyone, I'm Rachel Yager. I'm at SymposiumX, and I'm with Marc. Marc?
Good to see you.
Yes. Please introduce yourself so that we all know about you.
Great. My name is Marc Massar. I'm the head of strategy, products, innovation, experience, and standards at Worldpay. I've been there for about 4 years now, almost 4 years, and love working in the payments business, and I'm really excited to talk about innovation in payments today.
So we are really excited that you are joining us at SymposiumX. And so the first question I want to ask you is, what's all this big fuss about payments and suddenly all the news and all the acquisition? And so what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question to talk about. There's so much activity in the payment space, I think, largely because it's been an underserved area of technology, of commerce, of interactions for so long. For a long time, the neatest interaction, the neatest sort of innovation in payments happened in the 90s with check cards. And then, there wasn't a whole lot that happened until probably 2010, 2012, somewhere in there, where we started to see things like the introduction of the iPad in retail, the introduction of the wallets. Google Wallet didn't exist in 2011, and then it did in 2012, and then 2013, 2014, the rise of some of the other wallets, Apple Pay and the like. And so I think for a long time, especially in the United States, there was a bit of almost it was sort of a back room thing, a back office activity, and because of the activity that some of the tech giants and others have kind of pushed forward, and certainly regulatory environments as well, there's been a lot of activity there. So I think that it's a really important time for payments because it's changing from some of this back office activity, sort of the things that have happened in the background. People are didn't really see these things, and now it's right there. It's changing the interaction in the way that people buy things and sell things. It's quite a really exciting time.
So so as a thought leader in your field, what would you describe about the future that you see that would get us even more excited?
I think future payments is an interesting topic because you don't really have to look very far in order to see the future. You can simply look at the past and see how innovation in the past has changed the way consumers shop or the scale at which they're able to access goods and services. So, and I'll talk about it today in my presentation. Sears and Roebuck is my starting point, where I talk about if you want to learn about the future of e-commerce, all you have to do is look at Sears and Roebuck of the past and see what they did, the model that they implemented, and how it changed over the early part of the 1900s. And you can see how companies like Amazon are mimicking those interactions. And so the way that you see the future of payments is by looking to the past. But I think certainly, more sort of specifically, more concretely, there's a lot of activity in the space around identity, authentication. Yes. Authentication of consumer becomes, as well as authentication of seller, becomes really quite important because it starts to kind of blur that boundary between, I have a piece of, plastic, or I have, credentials or whatever for payment, to I'm presenting, my identity to you, and that's validated and authenticated, and then that eliminates a step essentially in the payments process, and then things become kind of what I call translucent, but others are called transparent as well. So I think that's especially in the next 2 to 3 years, that's where a lot of development is going to be, is specifically in the identity and authentication space, certainly in Europe.
Yeah. That's certainly very interesting. So let us get back to Marc the person. So first, may I check that you're not a robot? Are you a machine? You're a real person?
Real person.
Okay. So let us...
I got to tell you, I was in Japan just this last week, and we went to I can't remember where we're at, but we're walking around and there's a mall and there was a robot there, and it was a human, and you've seen him standing at the thing, and it was like an information kiosk, and my wife was like, "Is that a person? Is that not a person? Is that a person? Is that a person?" So they're getting quite lifelike, the robots.
Is it a female or male?
Oh yeah, it was a female,
yeah,
right? I mean, in Japan, that's always the thing. The female robot stands there with the the little information uniform, and
Yeah, they look pretty nice. I think.
yeah, it's a little scary. There was a guy standing there, and he was like getting really close, and she was just smiling and nodding at him. It was a little creepy.
So tell us a bit about how you grew up to be hating the payments architecture. When is your growth process? And did it started from when you're a little boy, or
my digital origin story is something that I like to talk about in kind of these contexts, because it really has led me to where I am today. I grew up around tech because it was just sort of there, and my dad and I were kind of involved in Los Angeles in the kind of the hobbyist movement. And when I was a little kid, I started taking programming classes and things like that. And I busted a couple of my fingers in my hand at school playing football. And so instead of PE, I was in the computer lab, and I basically fixed computers for like 6 weeks while my fingers were healing. Yeah. So that was just sort of early on. I just was always involved with tech and that. And you could fast forward, some time, and I got into the Hollywood space and worked at a place that was, kind of this really great fusion of art and writing and technology and enabling writers to bring their scripts and screenplays to market, which is really cool. It was always there for me. It was always, kind of this neat tool where I was able to use technology to solve problems that other people couldn't. So it was a great kind of experience just to be a kid and growing up around it.
So Mark, how would you describe your next step in terms of innovation? How would you see yourself playing in the space of innovation?
Yeah, People often talk about like disruption and innovation, and I kind of don't really buy into this idea that there's this magical disruptive cycle. I think that at least in the payment space, scale is really important. So the players that have scale are going to be able to do a lot. Maybe they won't be the fastest moving. They may not be the ones that come up with the greatest, fastest, neatest tech, but the reason that they're in the positions they're in is because they have, really broad solutions available. And so, for my team, from an innovation perspective, it's really great to see them kind of leverage some of that scale and then try to produce products that, help customers solve very specific problems in the marketplace. I think, for me personally, I'm going to spend more time probably in the identity and authentication space, certainly around things like, banking, open banking, API-driven development, because this is where, people talk about software eating the world and all of that, and I truly do believe that, because, we're getting to a point in kind of software and technology development where it's become less sort of critical for you to understand, the code, and more important for you to understand how to write systems and products and solutions that, learn over time. So certainly introduction of AI and ML type tools to help further your products. This is going to be a big part of where the industry goes. There are whole sort of industries that don't exist today that will exist tomorrow simply because of data and the tools around data transformation and information. So I think that payments will adopt some of those technologies and tools and then start to change as well. And so if you start to combine identity, this scale, the scale of all the information that some of these players have, advanced, learning tools. You kind of start to put these things together. You can start to build really interesting, models and predictive models around, how people shop and, where they're going to shop and, how businesses interact and, on a commerce level. And I think that's where we're going to spend, probably, the next, 2 to 5 years. It'd be really a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for your time. And join us at SymposiumX.
Thanks.